And I'm telling you, these things are getting cheap these days. Look at this. That's all right. I know how to fix it. So I go to tighten this thing, and it's and I usually double check this stuff before I put it on. But I was in a hurry, and you know how that goes. So anyways, let me tell you what happened. So I go to tighten this, and it just keeps clicking, and it's not getting tighter. It just keeps stripping, right? All right, so when you get these hose clamps, and you see that the bolt is loose, okay, or this housing here is loose, crimp it down, okay? Just crimp it, and that'll solve your the stripping issues, and you can really get some torque on these after that. And I really don't like worm gear clamps, but they're cheap and they're readily available. I usually use like a T-bolt or a pinch clamp or a constant tension band. Hold on. All right, so here we go. This is a constant tension clamp, and these actually work really, really good, especially when you're dealing with crimping a hose over plastic, okay? And these are very misunderstood. So what happens is there's a constant tension around the whole the whole circular, what would you call that? The circle here, okay? Let's just call it the circle. All right. So it's evenly distributes a clamping effort, okay? And even if you you pinch this down and expand the ring, what will happen is when you slide this over and you release it, this actually pulls towards the center. Now you have this constant tension band around the whole circumference of the hose, okay? These are really good when you're working with plastic because it'll cinch down when it heats up and cools off, and it'll actually grip pretty good. There's a lot of people, they don't understand these clamps, and what's there to understand about them? Well, it's quite simple actually. When you get these, they have to have no rust, okay? And if it does have rust, and that means that's a fail point for these, okay? It's a weak point. It will no longer have a constant tension effect. Another thing is if it's dented, okay? We're not talking about little dings or scrapes or anything like that, but if it's dented or if you see these ears are bent up, that will actually distort this clamp and it will lose its sealing effect, okay? So this is the most understood clamp, the most misunderstood clamp, okay? And some of them will have like locks right here where you can just squeeze them together and they'll lock, and then you just tap it with a screwdriver and it springs into action around the hose. So these are good actually, okay? Now, the next best thing to a constant tension clamp is what you call heat shrink. I have used heat shrink before, and this actually came on the hose, which is I'm really grateful for. But the heat shrink ones, I usually use those on the big turbo diesels, any kind of big engine, Caterpillar, stuff like that. And these create a constant tension band around the whole circumference of the hose, and they clamp evenly. All the weight is distributed evenly, and all that tension is focused towards the center of the hose, and it crimps really good. When installing these, they will be a little snug at first. So what I usually do is I will get baby powder. You want to put baby powder underneath these clamps, okay? One, for them to slide, and two, when they actually start shrinking, they can actually slide on the hose a little bit, okay? And a good tip is actually you want to use baby powder on all your hose clamps, all right? You need that slipping effect. It's the same thing as putting an inner tube in a tire, okay? You want to have that baby powder there so it can slip a little bit, okay? And it'll actually center the inner tube, and well, this isn't about inner tubes, but it'll actually allow that clamp to relax on the hose and do its job. Those are really good. I prefer these over any other clamp, okay? Now, there's some other clamps out there. Now, let's just use this as an example. This is a T-bolt clamp. Now, you will see clamps that look like this, but what they have is a stacked set of washers. Hold on, let me see if I got one. All right, so this is just for explanation purposes, okay? I added these washers. Now, when you get a clamp, it looks like a T-bolt clamp, or sometimes it's a worm gear clamp, you'll see a stacked set of washers underneath either the worm, the head of the worm, the screw, underneath the head of the screw, or underneath the nut here on the stud. Now, this type, when you see the stack of washers, okay, what that actually does, these are for industrial uses, okay, heavy equipment, excavators, skid steers, rollers, stuff like that, okay. So when you're dealing with the very heavy equipment, what they use is actually a thermostatic clamp, okay, thermostatic clamp. Why do you need something like that? Well, let me tell you why. What that actually does is this stack of washers here, okay, it will actually, when you have something hot, okay, radiating heat, what will happen is this stack of washers here on that temperature sensitive clamp, that will actually expand, okay, and it will actually get tighter on the clamp. Now, that's when you're dealing with 20, 25 psi, a lot of pressure in these systems, okay, when they get hot, and they need that pressure to reduce the temperature more efficiently. And we'll probably get into that later, but this is just about clamps. Now, the stack of washers, when they grow, they have more clamping force, okay, because it's expanding. Now, when it cools down, obviously, it loosens up, not to the point where it's actually loose on the equipment, but loose enough to where it's not distorting anything. And they'll use this a lot on intercoolers. They'll use it on those big diameter plastic radiators, along with the heat shrink clamp style hose clamps. But yeah, those are for industrial use, tractors, farm equipment, stuff like that. So that will be the thermostatically controlled clamp. Now, moving on. Let's see here. The T-bolt clamp, okay? The T-bolt clamp is a very strong clamp, okay? And it is stainless steel, most of them are. And this is a good brand, okay? This is an ideal brand. It has 2 spot welds to have it to keep everything together, okay? So when you get the Chinese ones, you'll notice that they have 4 smaller spot welds, okay? And when you're dealing with spot welding and tension, only 2 spot welds take all the tension, okay? Now, you would say that 4 spot welds, actually there's a backup plan, but that's not true. See, what happens is when those 4 smaller spot welds, when they actually break, it'll actually tear the material, and the other 2 spot welds ain't too far behind. So I use the ideal clamps. They have 2 spot welds per the length of the band, okay? It has a bigger spot weld, and the diameter, the actual ring where it does most of the work, is bigger, okay? So it has a more, I wouldn't say dynamic, but I'd say more surface area of that weld, okay? It's similar to if you were to cut a frame, okay? Let's just pretend that this is a frame, and you cut it. Well, what happens is when you weld that back together, that weld is only so wide. So what you do is to make the surface area wider on a weld and longer and stronger, and what happens is it can actually transfer energy better, is you make, this is for impact stuff use, like plows and stuff. You would actually cut it like crossways, across like this, and have that weld longer, okay? The longer the weld, the stronger it is. Now, when bracing I'm getting off the subject. My ADD's kicking in. But, all right, let's just go against, all right, I might as well. Okay, so this is a frame, and you go to cut the frame on a vehicle, okay? You do not want to box weld a frame, okay? What happens is it actually limits the transitional, the torsional flexes of a frame, okay, when you box it in like that. What you want to do is it'll actually be stronger if you're just to weld lengthwise, okay? If you're to put a patch, you weld lengthwise. And what that does is it allows the frame to tweak and bend and transfer that energy without actually transferring too much energy to the weld, and it'll break. All right, so back to clamps. All right, so this is a T-bolt clamp, very strong. Now, this is a ideal one. It has 2 spot welds, which is a lot better than the 4, I think. It's just my opinion. You can form your own opinion. I explained earlier why I like them better. This is good for diesels, again, heavy equipment, and when you want something to be very tight, okay, and you got to put a lot of torque behind it, all right? These, you can use them on plastic. You just got to be very careful on how tight you tighten them, okay? So it's very easy to over torque with one of these. They're very, very effective, and I mean, what else can I say? The surface area is really wide. They have a real wide clamping surface area. And I prefer these over the worm gears, and I like to hide the T-bolt and just have that on the hose. Now, a side note about these, okay, since they're stainless steel, you can get your torch, you can get your MAP gas torch, and you can heat the outside here, and it'll actually blue the clamp, okay? So this clamp will actually turn blue and all different kinds of colors because it's a stainless and you're heating it up. So these are nice. I mean, not much more I could say about them. Moving on. All right. These are just in the bag. I'm not endorsing anyone. These are all bought. Let me see. Okay, pinch tight clamps. We all know what they are, okay? These are these, you know, you got to have a, let's quote unquote, special tool, and you really don't. So these are pinch type clamps, and they say you need a special tool for them. You actually don't. You just need a tool that will actually, let me set this phone down and see if I can balance it. So you just need a tool that'll evenly clamp this, okay? You can't get a pair, you can't do this to it, okay? Can't scissor effect it because it'll actually weaken the clamp. What you need is a actual device that supports the back here and crimps it, okay? And the crimp is important on these because that crimp, it'll actually, it's a very strong crimp, and usually they use them on hard plastic, all right? And if you want, you can use a special tool if you're doing hard plastic, because that actually creates a downward tension when you use that tool. I think it's like 50 bucks. I think it's up to like 70, maybe even 100 now. But what I do is I just use a flat, you know, pair of side cutters, and I crimp onto it. Because we're talking about radiator hose, it's softer material, okay? So it's softer material, and what'll actually happen is that downward pressure, it'll actually sink into the hose and create a perfect seal, if you will. And I really like using these. They're really clean looking. Harley Davidson uses them on their oil hoses. Overall, a very good clamp. Now, sometimes you'll see like a double crimp clamp. I don't like those as much because the actual double crimp, it doesn't have a reinforcement like this one does. Okay, that reinforcement prevents it from unclamping. Okay, so that's the pinch type clamps. I prefer these a lot. I just can't find the right size I need usually. So, yeah, those are pinch type clamps. There's all kinds of clamps, okay? There's, and I could go on, but it's getting like 10 minutes now, and you're probably getting bored. So I'm just gonna sign off. I got to get this stupid thing together. Yeah, so catch you on the flip, guys. Kidding me? I did a whole freaking video and I didn't hit record. Oh, these videos are getting to me. I swear I can't get anything done. This 1 hour job turned into almost 2 days now. All right, so look, I use baby powder on the hose so the clamp can actually find its happy place, its relaxed position on the hose, if you will, okay? So it'll actually have a better clamping effort all the way around. So just put a little bit of powder there. It could be talc, baby powder, whatever you want to use. If you find some monkey butt, you can use that. Any kind of talc powder works really good. Fills in those pores and allows it to relax. So another place where you want to put baby powder is on an inner tube in a tire, okay? What'll happen is that powder will create a lubrication between the two rubbers. And when that inner tube expands, it'll actually expand more evenly and find its resting place. So just a helpful hint, use baby powder. There's a place for it in the garage. That's one of them. So with not further ado, I will catch you on the flip. So again, guys, there's the special tool that they say you need, okay? I don't use that, okay? So, and I think I may have said this before, but there is a clamp for every situation, all right? And one of the places I like to actually use these is in those tight areas, hard to reach places, okay? Okay, for instance, down there. Now you may say, well, how are you going to get it off? Okay, well, it's pretty easy actually to get these off. Okay, after you crimp this on, okay, and this is the, let me just set this down here. This is the tool I use, okay? So I will come in here like this, and I will crimp it, okay? And that will crimp around the hose. Okay, pretty simple, pretty easy, pretty standard stuff. So when you go to release these, and this is what's best about them, okay? When you get those tight areas, all you have to do to release this, sorry, my phone keeps adjusting. All you have to do is stick a screwdriver here, here, anywhere in this area, okay? And, oops, no, not there. Just right on the edge here and hit it with a hammer, okay? It'll dislodge this buckle right here. And it will loosen up, okay? Tight areas like this, tight areas like that, perfect. Perfect. You get your screwdriver down in there and pop that clamp, okay? No, that's not cocaine. So, yeah, you just pop that clamp off, okay? See, nice tight area. Oh, by the way, that's my, say the 7/16 14 bolt, or the bolt head I cut off, grinded a little slot, screwed it in with a screwdriver, and tighten that thermostat housing down. So there you go. There's a place for every clamp, and that's one of them. And very important, do not forget this gasket. Okay? Helps seal the bolt. Comes in this kit. There it is. That gets torqued to 180 foot-pounds. And just in case if you were wondering how I take the heat shrink clamps off, I got to reclock this one, so might as well show you how I do that. I actually do have a dedicated screwdriver for this, but that's it. Take your time. It'll snap when it's ready. And you can feel it. The heat shrink is actually a lower melting point than the hose, so you're not gonna damage the hose as long as you don't abuse. That's a heat shrink clamp. Best clamp on the market right there. Hands down. Oh well.